Okay, so in this video I'm going to take a look at mesh skinning here in Blender. I've got a garage door and frame with hydraulic pieces and everything else. This is one complete object. What I want to do is basically add in armatures, which will an armature which will contain bones, which I'm then going to skin to certain parts of the mesh, or as Blender puts it, parent, and then that will create my vertex groups that I can then apply weight painting to, and each of the bones will then control certain parts of the mesh. So let's get started. First of all, then I'm going to set my cursor to where I want the armature to basically start at, which will be the first bone. And I want to point out that when you actually do any kind of skinning like this, as far as Blender goes, now when I had Maya, it worked slightly different in Maya. Actually, not slightly, it worked a lot different, but because it uses joints and their skinning process is very different. But what I found is that when I skin certain parts of the mesh and didn't apply weight painting to other parts of the mesh and, vertex groups and so on and so forth, when I exported it out and brought it into the Giants editor, those parts that weren't skinned and had vertex groups on and were weight painted were invisible. So I learned something. So basically, each part has to have some kind of weight painting on it, and subsequently a vertex group, and that needs to be assigned to a bone of some description. But basically, what we can do is set all those parts up, and then in the XML we can set what we actually want to animate. So even though it will actually have a bone and it will be a vertex group will be assigned, and then therefore weight paint will be applied also, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will be controlled by anything, because we will tell what part we want to control through the XML. So what I'm going to do first of all is Shift S and set my cursor to the origin point, which I've already set up for where the armature I want the armature to basically come in. And all I've done here is just selected certain parts in the door where it's going to kind of rotate. And it seemed like a good place to put the main bone, because that's actually also going to be controlling, this frame area here also. But that won't actually be controlled in the XML. It will just be a visual object. Okay. Well, the whole thing will be a visual object, but it won't actually be controlled in the XML, so it won't be animated. So what I'm going to do then is let's just make sure that these are set. Yep. So I'm just going to do a Shift A armature, which will create my armature, and that will then have my first bone in there. And as I say, that's just going to control, or I keep saying control, but it's just going to be assigned to the frame area and the hydraulic pump motor, whatever you want to call that, and certain extra parts that I want to actually animate. So what I would suggest to do is name everything as you go. It just makes things a little bit easier. So what we're going to do then is I'm going to first of all rename this to garage door, and I'll update the mesh data here. And I think let's see, if I call this let's see, garage door hydraulic, something like that. Yeah, we'll make that a capital. There we go. So garage door hydraulic. Okay, and I'm going to actually take that, paste that there, and paste that there. Okay, so this will be, as I say, the main bone, which will just be assigned, but it won't actually be controlling anything. Well, it will here, but it won't later on. As I say, I won't actually set it to anything in the XML. Then I'm just going to make further bones and place them where I want them to be. Now, the second one is going to be for the door, to control the door, which is going to be in exactly the same place as this one. So I'm going to go into edit mode with this bone selected. So if it's not selected, just select it. Because it's the only one there, you can just press A to select it, or you can just click it, whichever. And we're just going to go Shift D to duplicate it. Then I'm going to right click to cancel the move operation. And then this one here, I'm just going to literally call door. Okay. Naming here is important, but only to the point that it makes sense to you. You can call it whatever you want. Just make sure that everything links up in the XML later on if you're going to do i3D mapping. So then what I want to do, I'm going to go back into object mode, select the mesh, and go into edit mode. And I'm going to deselect everything. I'm going to select by double tapping A, and I'm going to select the next place I want the bone to be. So I'm going to go L on that one, which is select linked, and then this one over here, L. So it's just going to basically select any part of the mesh that's linked. And I'm going to do Shift S to face. Now it doesn't matter if it's invert, edge, or face. If you do vert, it'll be Shift S to vert. If you do edge, it'll be Shift S to edge. And in this case, Shift S to face. So it doesn't matter where you're in here. And then I'm going to go back into object mode and select my armature, go into edit mode, and with any one of these bones selected, doesn't matter. Again, Shift D, right click to cancel the move, right click again and go snap selection to cursor. And it will snap it here. And it will always snap at the tail because that's where it's controlled. We've got the tail on the head. And if I go into pose mode, you can see it will actually just rotate around the tail. So it won't, so it'll always snap to the tail, which is great, really helpful. So I'm going to go back into object mode, select the mesh, go back into edit mode. And I want to create another bone, which is going to be for the punch. So I'm just going to come up to here, double tap A to deselect everything, L on this one here, and then L on this one here. Shift S again, in this case, to face. Go back into object mode, select my armature, into edit mode, and again, select any of the bones, doesn't matter. Shift D, right click to cancel, right click again, snap selection to cursor, and it'll put it up here. So now we want to name the bones. So I'm just going to call this one punch. This one will be hydraulic. Like so. Okay. And then the next thing we need to do is actually set the orientation of the bones because currently they're not set up correctly. And what I mean by that is if I try to animate the punch, for example, and if I go into pose mode, select this bone here, currently what it's going to do, if I was in global mode, it's just going to go GY and move like this. There's no way I'd be able to kind of guess how it's going to do if I did freehand movement. And even if I go into local mode, it's only going to just flip the axes. So now it's just going to be GZ. And again, there's no way I'd be able to do that freehand. So we need to orientate the bones in the correct place. So I would do this in local mode. And what I'm also going to do in the pose menu here, I'm going to go to viewport and click in front so I can actually see the bones. So we're going to start off, if I go into here, I'm going to start off with this one, the garage door hydraulic, which is the main bone, which is not going to actually control anything, but it still needs to be assigned. As I said before, if you don't do that, certain parts will be invisible once you get it into the Giants editor. So we're just going to do RX, hold down control and rotate it, and that will snap it incrementally to 90 degrees, minus 90, okay. Going to do the same with the door, so I'm just going to do RX, hold down control, and again, snap that incrementally to minus 90 degrees. And then I want to do the hydraulic, so I'm going to select that one, RX, and then rotate that, again holding down control so it snaps into the correct location. RX, hold down control, and again rotate that one so it matches. Now with bones you have a pose position and a rest position. If I go to the rest position, they all snap back up to where they were before. We don't want that. So I need to do in pose position, I need to press A to select all of the bones, and then go Control A and apply pose as rest pose. Now when I go into rest position, they will stay exactly where they're meant to be. So that's really important to do that. So now we've got all of those set up, I'm going to go back into object mode. And this is where the skinning process comes in. So what we need to do, I'd recommend to save, always save. So I've got this add-on called PowerSave. It comes on Blender Market and Gumroad. It's totally free, or at least it was. I'm pretty sure it still will be. Just saves so much time. You don't have to go up here and go File, Save As. Just literally here, PowerSave, and you're done. So I'm going to select the mesh first. Shift select the armature. Control P. And we want to set the parent armature deform with empty groups. So now if I go back to the mesh, you can see it's created several vertex groups. And it's also put the mesh, the garage door mesh, as a child of the armature. So then the next thing we need to do is actually apply our weight paint. And now what I'm going to do is in reverse, because I think it will just be easier. I'm going to go into edit mode, double tap A to make sure everything is deselected. Do that a couple of times if you have to. Then we're going to come up here and I'm just going to do L and L on that one. This is for the punch. Make sure you have the punch vertex group selected. We're going to do L and L. And then with the weight set at 1, click Assign. So then we go to the hydraulic. And I want the punches to be still selected here. So now I'm just going to select all the other parts for the hydraulic stuff. So we're just going to come down here and L, 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 and just go through all of this stuff like so. We'll do that. Just put the cursor over what you want to select, press L, and it will do a select linked. We want all of that stuff there. And same on this side as well. Just going to come over here, L, 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 and just go around and select all these pieces. Like so. Okay, so now we should have all of those set up. Again, with the hydraulic or whatever you've called it, or whatever you're setting up, make sure you have the correct vertex group selected. With the weight at 1, we click Assign. So now for the door then, so I'm going to double tap A to deselect everything and then select all the parts for the door. I'm going to do L, L, L again with all of this stuff around here. So we'll come into the inside here and just do all of that. These as well. L, L. And this one. That. Again, just do all of these as you need to. Do all that, and then these ones up here. I want that, and the pin, all of that. We'll do these as well. That one, that one, that one, and that one. And I'm going to do 3 on the numpad to go into right orthographic, go into wireframe, hold down shift and just do a box select for the rest of it. Go back to solid shade. And what I generally do here is I will press G and just move it out of the way just to free up the area so I can actually look around and make sure that I got everything without that being in the way sort of thing. So just makes it a little bit easier to see what's going on. Control Z to put it back where it was before. And again, with the weight set at 1, we click Assign. So now what I can do is actually select the hydraulic vertex group and click Select, and that will select the other places. You can do the punch, but because the punch is included in the hydraulic, not really necessary, but you can always select that one as well. Then we're going to do Control I to do an invert selection. Now I can select my garage door hydraulic vertex group, and again with the weight set at 1, click Assign. Okay. So we go back into object mode. We can actually check all of these. So if I go into weight paint, you can see which ones have been painted. So red is full weight, blue is no weight. So we can go through these. So garage hydraulic is just for the frame piece. Then we have the door, the hydraulics, and then the punch. Okay, so you can see what's going on. I go back to object mode. So now if I select my armature and go into pose mode, I can then select each of the bones and make sure that everything. So if I click G, we can move this one around. If I press R, we can rotate it. But again, as I say, this one is not going to be set up in the XML to be controlled by anything, but it needs to have something assigned to it. Otherwise, it will be invisible within the editor and obviously in game. So we're going to set the door. These are the main parts that we need to make sure are working. So we go RX and rotate that, and that looks good. The hydraulics, RX, and we rotate that. And you can see the actual punches are disconnecting, so we need to parent those. So what I'm going to do is select this one and this one, Control P. Actually, I need to do this in edit mode. So we're going to go to edit mode. So do that again. Select this one and shift select that one. Control P, make parent and keep offset. If you do connected, it will basically connect this bone to the other one. We don't want that because obviously it's going to move it away from where we want it. So we want to keep the offset. Okay. Now we can go back into pose mode and select the hydraulic bone. And then when I rotate it, it's going to rotate all the parts together. If I then expand that, select the punch, I can do GY and move this. Make sure you're in local mode though. If you go back to global mode, it's just going to do this, which is no good. We want to be in local mode, GY, and then it will move correctly. Okay. Fantastic. So now what we want to do though, we don't want to keep the garage door, the mesh, as a child of the armature. We want to separate those out. So with the mesh selected, right click, parent, and clear and keep transformation. And now it's a separate object again. But because of all the vertex groups and the weight painting, everything will still be controllable by the bones. So if I select the armature, go back into pose mode and select any one of these, it will still actually rotate and do what it needs to do. So if I select the door, that will still do what it needs to do. Okay. So pretty straightforward. Not too bad to do really. And then we've got our mesh all skinned and set up. So just to go over what this basically does, it creates an armature modifier and sets it to the object, which is the armature, name of the armature basically. So that's the name, garage door hydraulic. And it's assigned, it's binded to vertex groups, which is what we set it up to. So we've got our vertex groups here, and then we've basically gone into each of the vertex groups and applied the appropriate weight paint to them. So in this particular instance, the door is in its open state, and I have found that if I do, when I played around with this a few times, when the door was in its closed state and I then exported it out, things started to get a bit freaky on me, and parented bones didn't work properly for whatever reason, and I don't know why. So in this particular case, it's possible because of where I set them up. I don't know, but we don't need to move anything here in Blender. If you wanted to animate this, you could do that. Pretty straightforward to do that here in Blender. Just go to your timeline and set up all your parts. So we can do that real quick. So we would set 0 to maybe 60. So we go to 0 on the timeline and then go into pose mode and set all of your bones up. So not worrying about this one. So we do the door. Actually, we could do all of those. We could select all of them with A, and then I, location, rotation, and then select the door, and then move it to wherever we want to move it to. But I wouldn't recommend to do like a massive, animation. So don't do like this and then set it, because it won't work properly. So we need to go in increments. So we move our frames on the time slider here up to 20, and then go down. If I actually bring up the side menu here, what I'll do is let's go through all of these. Let's switch it over to this, just so it makes it easier to actually see the correct readings. I'm going to press A to select everything again. I, location, rotation, move it to 20 in this case, and then select your door, and then go RX and move that to maybe 30. So we can put in here 30, and then move the rest of them wherever you need to move them to. So that's maybe, in this case, what I would do is go to wireframe and then RX and move this where I want it to be. So, something like this. If I actually go into pose, I'll turn the bones off, or the in front, so I can actually see things a bit clearer. RX, and we'll just move this roughly where we want it. RX, something like that. Make this a bit smaller and bring this one out. Now I can select my punch here and then go GY, move this back where I want it. So GY, and then kind of move that up to here somewhere. Let this one RX, move that somewhere there. Let the punch GY and put that something like that. Okay. And you select them all again. I, location, rotation. Go to 40. Go to your door and do RX and move it to 60. And just type that in. Then go to your hydraulics, RX, and rotate this. Get it somewhere close, and then zoom in to get like fine tune. Then, something maybe like that. Select your punch, GY, and move this back. And zoom in again. We'll do GY and select the hydraulic, whoops, RX, and kind of move this where we want it to be. GY, a little bit of kind of backwards and forwards, but necessary. A to select them all. I, location, rotation. Select your door, and then we can actually go to 0. Actually, it will be 90. 90, yeah. So we can do hydraulics again, RX, and then just move that roughly where you want it to be. Zoom in, the mouse wheel, RX. Again, position this roughly, and just kind of do your fine tuning. So we'll do that, and then select the punch, GY, zoom in a bit, GY, and just keep doing that until you get it where you want it to be. So we'll do something like that, GY, move that to somewhere, maybe something like that I think would work. A to select them all, I, location, rotation. Oh, damn it. I did it again, didn't I? Every time. I didn't move the doohickey. Didn't move the time slider. Let's go back. Yeah. Right, now we'll move the time slider. I always forget to do that. So now we'll do 90 on the door, and then we'll do the hydraulic. Always remember to do that. I forget every single time. RX. Just kind of move that. RX. Something like that. Select the punch. Good Lord. GY. What's gone on here? Something's gone a bit awry. GY. Moved it too far. There we go. GY. And something along the lines like that. Okay. So now we can press A to select everything. I, location, rotation. Okay. Go back into side shade, and then we can scrub through. And we have our door animation. Okay. Awesome. Now, none of these values will be of any use to you when you go, put them into your XML. But you can always set up your animation here in Blender just to make sure that everything does work, that nothing gets, freaks out and does weird things if you wanted to do that. But as far as, you know, once you get it out of Blender into Giants Editor, you will need to set up everything in the Giants Editor and take the values from there, because these values will mean absolutely nothing to the XML. But I always like to, you know, set the animation up if it's simple enough here in Blender, just to make sure that, as I say, everything works as I would expect it to do so. And then, you know, once you're done with that, you know, maybe save it. And you want to delete them all, delete all the animations, because we don't want none of this on there, because we don't need them. But you can always set them up so that, as I say, you know, you can see everything working. So again, we can select everything and then just delete the keyframes. Make sure though, when you delete your keyframes, that you are in the open position where you initially set your bones up. If you delete them in the closed position, things will break possibly. So make sure that you are in your, you know, open position on keyframe 0. Then you can select all the keyframes and delete the keyframes, and you won't have any issues. So now we'll have no animation again, and we can get rid of that. Right. So we go back into object mode, and we should be good to export it out now. So yeah, so you just basically open up the Giant Size 3D exporter. You'll, by default, it'll say use Blender file name. We don't want that, so just uncheck that, click here, and go to wherever you've got your folder set up. So I'll go to my desktop, Garage Door. Again, I'm just going to call this Garage Door set, and then export all. And then we can go into here, and we should have a Garage Door. So we can open this in the Giants Editor. And we now have our Garage Door. So awesome. Then we just need to kind of set everything up as you would, like we did in Blender, but now here in the Giants Editor. So with the door in its open position currently, if I open up the XML, you can see I've already created this one. So we've got our Garage Door, hydraulic punch, and then all the bits and pieces there. I've put some values in because I know what I want to kind of set this up as. But you know, like your times and stuff like that. But I would just look at different animated objects, XMLs. There's loads of them. If you know, this is no different from 19, I don't believe. So you could go back to 19 and have a look at some of those in there that might be similar to what you're working on, and then just kind of work out what you want. So if I kind of say from Blender, my time was at 0 to 60. So here in the XML, it's 0 to 1, but this would be my 60. But this is time, not frames. That's where it gets a bit kind of, you know, difficult to understand when you're taking it from one program to the other program, because in Blender it actually uses, these are frames, not time. But basically, I've got this set up, if I can remember where that is, to 24 frames per second. So you would go to 24, and that would be 1 second. 24 frames is 1 second. Okay, 24 frames per second. That's the way I understand it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but then you'd obviously take all your, you know, what you need to get from that. But like I say, just look at other XMLs and you should be able to get something that will work. So we have our like 90, 60, 30 and 0. So in this particular position, the door, if I click on the door, it's at 0. So we would be starting from the bottom here. That's is that right? That might be backwards. Okay. No, that's right, because that's closed. So it would actually be on the X, it would be 90 when it's closed. That's right. So 90 when it's closed, and then 0 when it's open. That's right. So you set this to 0. And then basically all you do is just take your values. So you would look at these and just go, that one we don't need to worry about. I would probably just move that up one. So we've got door, and then hydraulic, and then the punch. Okay, so take your values. So we know this one's going to be 0. Hydraulic is going to be negative 15. So we can take that one from there. Hydraulic at 1 is going to be negative 15. Oops. Don't need all of those. That one there. Negative 15. And then the punch is going to be 272 on the z-axis. So we've already got that, I think, 272, yep. And then we go to the next stage. So we go to here, and you can look at this and say, okay, so next one is 30. So we would do 30. And then this one here, you can kind of use this as a rough guide, I guess, in this case. So it would be 12 on the rotation for the hydraulics. I don't know if that's going to be minus 12. No, 12, there we go. So I don't know if that's going to be close, but can always kind of move it if we need to. Yeah, so it's not quite there. You can see it's a little bit off. So it might be 11.8. Yeah, there we go. Then we can take our punch and move that where we need to move it to. So I'll just kind of drag this back roughly to where I want it to be. You might need to kind of play around with the values here a little bit. So find where you need to find, and then we can do 1.8, 1.95. Maybe that will do. That looks pretty good actually. Yeah, that's not too bad. So 1.958. So we can take that from there and then paste that into here. So for the punch, it will be this one here at that value. That didn't work. Let's copy that and paste. Go away. Paste. There we go. Okay. Now we're getting it. So we go to the next one. So door. This is going to be 60. We type in 60. And then again, move all your pieces where you need them to be. So we'll take the hydraulic. Just going to rotate this manually to roughly where I want it to be, something like that. And then again, just kind of tweak the values, what you need them to be. So we'll do 43.5, 0.4, 2, maybe something like that. That looks pretty close. Then take the punch. We'll do, let's do 1.2, 0.15, maybe 1.6, 1.56. There we go. So we'll take that value on the punch and put that into there. And then the hydraulic will be 43.42 on this one here. And we can do the next one, which will be 90. We go to the door, 90, and then again change all the other parts. So rotate this, get it close, and then kind of zoom in to where you need to be. Pretty good, not too far off, I don't think. I might just take the punch here first and maybe do 0.5. See, 0.6. Bit too far. Let's do 0.56, 0.57. Yeah, something like that's pretty good. Not too bad. You can always go into wireframe if that helps. See what's going on. See here. Bring that back just a little bit, perhaps. 565, 566. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. We'll take that value and put that into here. And then the rotation of the hydraulic, 82.54. Put that into there. Okay. And that's that. We've now got all of our values set up correctly where we want them to be. So I'm not going to make a placeable out of this, but now you make a placeable and obviously connect all the parts up and then make sure that they all do what they're meant to do. And that is pretty much how you do door skinning and set up your animated objects. I'm ShyWizard. Thanks very much for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.